Shalom Aleichem. Good night of Shabbos. Good night of Shavuos. We're about to embark on the day of Kabbala Satira, b'simcha b'pnimius, with joy and inwardness and depth. I heard 3 stories this morning. I'll share them with you briefly and connect them to Chag HaShavuos. So I met a Yid in Shul this morning who is a Litvische Yid and a strong Talmud Chacham. And I tell him that I heard about our Rosh Hashiva, Ezra Shochat, the Rosh. He was a Talmud of Aron Kotler in the late 50s, early 60s in Lakewood, and then he went to Brisk and Eretz Yisrael. And one Shavuos, Erev Shavuos, Aron asks Rebbes Shochat, where will he be for Shavuos? He knew that he was a Lubavitcher, and Rebbes Shochat said, it's going to be in 770. So Aron said to him, Hayitochen, the Torah is here in Lakewood. Again, I don't know if those are the exact words, but the Teichen, the content. So he turned to him and he said, yes, Rosh Hashiva, you're right. The Torah is in Lakewood, but Moshe Rabbeinu is in 770. Even if he didn't say it, and even if it wasn't about Rabbanan and Rabbi Shochat, which it could be, the idea and the vart is gewaldig. It's exactly the attitude of a Lubavitcher Chassid versus a Godel, a Goin, a Litvischer leader who did so much for Yiddishkeit, and not only Rabbarim, but the whole Litvischer world. By us Chassidim, Torah, Shavuos, Matan Torah is about the communicator of Torah, the Moshe Rabbeinu. Not to Chas v'Sholem replace the Eibishter in Torah with a Moshe Rabbeinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu is the Memutza Mechaber, is the intermediary who brings together the disparate worlds of Gashmias and Ruchnias, which is the theme of Shavuos, having Ruchnias, spirituality, permeate the physical material matter. El Yoinim Yord Lamata v'Tachtonim Ol Lamayla, etc. The combination of the upper and the lower and the lower and the upper to become one, where the actual physical material has it in it. It's part of its DNA. So when I told this word to this Litvische Yid in Shul, he said, I don't believe the story. I said, okay. He says, I'll tell you why. I have 3 stories to tell you. One is, a Litvak from the Alte Heim came to see Aron from Europe, a real Litvische, and he spoke, he didn't speak so nicely about certain Rebbes, other Rebbes, Chassidische Rebbes. And after a few minutes, Aron says, Genug shoin, enough. They're very holy. That's one story he told me, to upschlag, to refute my point that Aron wasn't into the Moshe Rabbeinu's, the Rebbes, but into the Torah itself. The second story he told me was that Aron had a side room over there in Lakewood to the Beis Medrash, and someone once went in and he saw 2 Tanyas. And he learned Tanya with a chavrusa, someone else. It's the second story. The third story told me that he heard from a son who was a Talmud of Wachvogel, who was a Talmud Muvik of Rabbeinu Kotler, who told him that Aron was a bucking Kabbala in the mystical writings of Torah. And he said he was a bucking Kabbala more than in Bava Metzia, and not the way you and I understand Bava Metzia, the way Rabbanan understood Bava Metzia, and he was even greater than that in his knowledge of Kabbala. So Why, if that's the case, why didn't he tell everyone and share with everyone the importance of learning Kabbala? He said because he didn't have a Rebbe for that. That was his own. He didn't have a Messiah. He learned it on his own. He mastered it on his own. Rabbi say, I can't verify any of the three stories. But what I can tell you is the following. When we hear about this Gadol, about this Tzaddik, and about this Rebbe, he did like Chassidim, he didn't like Misnagdim, and all the, it's very superficial. Okay? It's very superficial. You have to know where a person's coming from, what his training was like, who were his role models, what did he develop into, and then understand that the predicament at the time could be the reason he said A, B, and C. One thing we know for sure, that learning Torah is where it's at. Having a Moshe Rabbeinu is where it's at, because you weren't a Chassid, you weren't a Misnagid, you weren't a Litvak, and you weren't Sephardic. Moshe Rabbeinu was Rabban Shal Yisrael, was the Rebbe of all Jews. We understand that for those that choose the Hasidic path, and it's a beautiful mahalach, it's a beautiful derech, a Moshe Rabbeinu becomes the facilitator within you to open up the door for you to learn more Torah. To understand this, it begins with Tanya chapter 2, which brings me to the idea of learning Chassidus, especially Shavuos time and the Hachlota we take, the resolution from Shavuos. I attended many Farbrengens of the Rebbe on Shavuos, and those Shavuos Farbrengens were full of Chassidus and deep Chassidus. I remember once the Rebbe spoke about the difference between Einoid and Einoid Mulvada. I think it was a Shavuos. Of course, we know that the Rebbe until 1971, till his mother-in-law passed on, he would have the meals in 770, and he stayed. And then he came down 3 o'clock or so, and he said, "Amay Chassidus," without a niggin before. And I heard from people who were there, it was heavenly. It's really awesome. It was quiet. It was dark outside. And the Rebbe came, sat down, and started to say a maimer. Many people are, Baruch Hashem, celebrating the Shavuos upcoming Yom Tov in the Catskills, at resorts, at hotels. You know, when I was a boy, a teenager, this didn't exist. I'm sorry. Everyone wanted to be in their shul, in their community for Shavuos. We have come a long way, as the saying goes. And without, passing judgment, wherever you are, make Shavuos, which on one hand is such a quick, easy Yom Tov, and there's no matzah, and there's no lulav. What do you have to do? Stay up Shavuos night, have a little cheesecake, listen to Aseres Adibris. That's small change, right? You know why? Because Shavuos is about the internal self. Kabbala Satayra, Besimchu Bepnimius. The previous Rebbe wished everyone, to receive the Torah, you must have Simcha and you must have Pnimius. And both, and boy, are those two things hard. Can one say that he's always besimcha, that she's living with joy, is happy about life, happy about family, happy about work? Can one say, who's even happy, that it's coming from within, it's deep, it's your DNA? So I say that Shavuos is the hardest Yom Tov. It's even harder than buying matzah for $25 a pound and buying an esrog for $500. Or schwitzing to put up a sukkah. Shavuos, because it doesn't have any physical object that you have to have, so the whole Yom Tov depends on you, on the self. And it's much harder. So what's the answer? The answer is besimcha. When you help someone else, you'll have simcha. Just do for someone else. You see someone in shul, sit down and talk to them, sit down and learn with them. Even if it's in the middle of tikkun, see them say tikkun. Or if it's in the middle of learning, like the Litva should learn all night. You see someone who seems alone, believe me, giving them a half an hour of your time is greater. And then you make up your learning and your tikkun later on, of course. So doing for someone else is the answer, the key to feeling besimcha. Because when you know that you helped someone else and you did something for someone else, even though it took away from your time, you'll feel great. You'll feel besimcha. And bepnimius, the second condition, innerness, depth. Enough with the shallowness. Enough with the glitz, the glamour, the hoo-ha. Just focus on being deep and having that experience to be authentic, be real, know yourself, your pluses and your minuses, your ups and downs, acknowledge them. And when you do that, you'll feel much better, because going through a real assessment of self is very cathartic, very therapeutic, very helpful. May Hashem help that you all endeavor in these ideas for the next few days as we prepare for Chag HaShavuos, Kabbala Satayra B'Simcha Pnimius, and we'll be Zeicha to the Gula Shlema with Mashiach Tzidkenu, Malkeinu Barashenu, and we will still be in Beit Hashem in Yerushalayim to receive the Torah in Yerushalayim, B'Binya Beis HaMikdash, B'Meher V'Meinu Mamash.